Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled Karen trespasses on my farm property to camp there without my permission. She ends up towing my vehicle from my land and then calls the police on me. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. And the title story starts like this. I've always thought that I have one of the best professions in the world. Being a farmer means I get to live on my huge property with little to no outside disturbances. I genuinely enjoy the company of my animals and I cannot imagine a life without them. That being said, I never have to miss human companionship as there are other farms as well as houses right beside my land. It's a wholesome community that never interrupts your life but is always present when you need anything. I cannot help but do the same for all of them and be there for them when anything goes south. I relished the fulfillment that being a farmer brought me. The beauty of this community lay in its delicate balance whenever we faced challenges or setbacks. Be it a sudden downpour threatening to flood the fields or a stubborn illness afflicting a beloved farm animal, we rallied together. Bonds were forged through shared experiences and a genuine desire to lend a helping hand. In turn, I found great joy in reciprocating the same unwavering support to my neighbors. Whether it was lending them a tractor to till their land, sharing tips on crop rotation, or offering solace during times of personal hardship, I reveled in the role of a reliable friend and ally. It was a mutual understanding that ran deep within our farming community, an unspoken promise to be there for one another, a reassuring presence during both triumphs and tribulations. My days were spent in the delightful company of my cherished animals, each one a testament to the intricate beauty of life. From the gentle lowing of the cows to the cheerful clucking of the chickens, the symphony of sounds was a constant reminder of the vibrant ecosystem that thrived under my stewardship. I never thought that I would have to deal with an ill-willed neighbor until it actually happened. The house that was right next to my fence was sold to a new lady. I assumed she would have the same friendly characteristics that everyone else in the community had, but it turns out I was sorely mistaken. The new owner was what one would describe as a Karen. She might easily be the most entitled person I've ever come across. Karen clearly did not fit into the neighborhood. Her spoiled behavior and audacious entitlement irked and frustrated those who had long upheld the values of humility, cooperation and respect. The once seamless rapport between neighbors began to fray at the edges as her actions became a source of constant tension and discontent. Karen's interactions with others were marked by a series of confrontations and complaints. Whether it was her incessant nitpicking about trivial matters, her unreasonable demands for changes to be made to neighboring properties, or her self-centered disregard for the peace and tranquility we held dear, she simply managed to antagonize nearly everyone within a shockingly short span of time. Her presence was a stark contrast to the ethos that had defined our community for generations. Karen had an uncanny ability to find fault in even the most minor noises emanating from neighboring farms. She frequently lodged complaints about the gentle hum of tractors, the crowing of roosters at dawn, and even the laughter of children playing. Her relentless noise complaints created a tense atmosphere and strained relationships within the community. Ignoring the long-standing agreements and understandings that had defined property boundaries for years, Karen insisted on encroaching on her neighbor's land. She erected fences that encroached onto neighboring properties, leading to disputes and a breakdown in the once respected boundaries that had maintained peace among the neighbors. Karen frequently made unreasonable demands for alterations to neighboring farms and houses. She insisted that trees be cut down because they obstructed her view, demanded alterations to the aesthetics of neighboring properties to suit her preferences, and even questioned the arrangement of crops on neighboring farms. Her constant demands for changes created resentment and frustration among the other neighbors. Her words were often laced with disdain and condescension. She belittled the farming profession and openly criticized the lifestyle choices and practices of her neighbors. Her derogatory remarks and snide comments left a sour taste in the mouths of those who had dedicated their lives to the land and animals they nurtured. It was not long before I had to deal with Karen myself. I would frequently see her walk into my property with no particular reason. She would simply wander around uninvited. That alone would have been easy enough to ignore, but she would constantly upset the animals that grazed. Sometimes she would even do picnics on my property, completely unfazed by my presence and the fact that she was trespassing. Karen's presence alone was enough to unsettle the creatures that grazed peacefully on my land. Her intrusive nature and lack of respect for their natural environment agitated them, disrupting the harmonious balance they had come to expect. The cows, usually gentle and docile, would fidget and shy away, their rhythmic munching disrupted by the discomfort they felt. She would shoo the sheep back into their pen even during their grazing time because she didn't like having to see farm animals from her front yard. Witnessing the distress caused to my animals struck a chord within me. Their well-being was paramount and I could not stand idle as Karen's actions upset their serene existence. It was a matter of principle and a responsibility I felt deeply as their caretaker. One afternoon, as I noticed Karen picnicking next to my grazing sheep, a surge of protectiveness washed over me. I hurriedly made my way over to intercept her before she could cause further distress. With a deep breath to calm my building frustration, I approached her, determined to address the situation in a civil manner. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I understand that you may have your preferences, but these sheep are free to graze on my land. It's essential for their well-being and the natural balance of this farm." Karen looked at me with an air of entitlement, a smug expression crossing her face. "Well, I don't appreciate having farm animals disrupt my view. I'm trying to maintain a certain aesthetic here, you know, trying to enjoy my picnic." She had the audacity to tell me that I could not carry out my profession on my own property simply because it obstructed her view. I told her that if she didn't leave immediately, I would call the police on her for trespassing. She seemed unfazed. I knew empty threats were not gonna be of much use with someone like her. I dialed the cops and actually informed them of the situation right in front of her. She was shocked that I actually went through with it. I couldn't bear to deal with her any longer and I went back into my house. I saw her pull out her phone from her bag and make a call of her own. She screamed that she will instead call the police on me, insisting that I assaulted her. Shortly afterwards, she made another mysterious phone call and she was grinning like the Grinch. I assumed the phone call to the cops would have sent her back to her place, but she continued to linger around. Whenever I looked out of the window, she would still be there bothering the sheep. I lost it and went back out to tell her to stop, but the second I stepped out, I was shocked to see a tow truck come into my farm. It proceeded to tow my car that was parked in my own property. I stood there dumbfounded as Karen watched with a smug smile, seemingly reveling in her ability to cause me further inconvenience. Anger surged through my veins and I approached the tow truck driver, demanding an explanation for his actions. The driver, caught off guard by my sudden outburst, hesitated for a moment before responding. He informed me that he was simply following instructions and that he had no choice. Fury welled up within me as I realized Karen had orchestrated this vindictive act. Without giving it a second thought, I reached into my pocket and retrieved my phone, dialing the police number once again. I made sure I recorded the situation so I would have evidence to my side of the story. The police arrived within 5 minutes of the second call. As I explained the situation to the police, Karen's confidence began to waver. She realized that her actions were not going unnoticed and that her attempts to disrupt my life were crossing legal boundaries. Karen attempted to defend her actions, justifying them as necessary to maintain her desired aesthetic. When I told them the truth and showed them the video, it was obvious that her excuse would not hold up. Karen visibly grew angry. Before I could process what was happening, she lunged forward and assaulted me right in front of the cops. Despite being a small woman, she managed to break my nose very easily. The officers pulled her away immediately and handcuffed her. I was still speechless and shocked from what had just happened. It all happened so fast that I couldn't even react. They took her to the police station and I finally had time to think about what to do next. Even if I could let my bleeding nose go, I was not about to let her get away with getting my car towed. The car was a precious gift from my late father. I went on to press charges and Karen ended up behind bars for trespassing and assault. More importantly, my animals and the rest of the farming community could finally resume their usual peaceful lives without the crappy behavior of Karen. And here, ripe stars, it seems like that some Karens really don't enjoy the peace and tranquility of farming communities, and of course they have to be the ones that disrupt the peace. I guess otherwise their lives would just be too easy. Why have an easy life if you can also have a difficult one, right? Anyway, the next one is titled Ultimate Petty Revenge. So this is not my petty revenge story. The best I've ever managed is going onto my ex-boyfriend's Netflix account after he cheated on me, messing up algorithms and suggested movies by liking a bunch of crappy rom-coms. However, I have a petty revenge story that my friend did that has always made me cackle in delight because it's the most insanely crazy and extreme level of revenge I've ever witnessed in real life. So basically, my friend's grandfather died, she was very close with him, and he left her £25,000. She and her boyfriend decided to buy a house together with it because they had been together 3 years at that point and had a 1-year-old daughter. My friend and her boyfriend apparently talked about it, and because he couldn't afford to save anything for a deposit, he agreed that she paid the £25,000 deposit and then they would get a joint mortgage for the remainder, and he would pay the first 2 years of mortgage repayments to make their contribution equal. So fast forward 18 months, her daughter asks where daddy's friend is, and my friend finds out the boyfriend had been having an affair for about a year and bringing the other woman to their house while my friend worked. She is a nurse, so does shifts including nights while their daughter was home. Obviously, my friend was devastated and very angry, and looking back, or logically now, she should have kicked him to the curb outside, but instead, because she knew he had brought this woman into their home, etc., she was the one to pack a bag and leave with their daughter back to her mother's house. By the time she had recovered a few weeks later, and obviously the reality of the situation had set in, she immediately told him they had to sell the house because she wanted her investment back, the 25k deposit she had paid. Because he really was an absolute leech/loser of a man, he had never been the sole payer of the mortgage repayments either, like they had agreed when purchasing the house, as his way to make up for/not contributing anything to the deposit. He had only paid the monthly mortgage amount out of his wage only for about 3 or 4 months before they ended up just splitting all bills equally because it's obviously just easier. He informs her at that point that he's already moved his girlfriend in, the girl he cheated on her with, and the only thing she can do is buy him out of his half cause he wasn't moving otherwise. He also threatened her that she had no legal leg to stand on if she expected a bigger share of the house sale because of her much bigger contribution via the deposit because it wasn't documented, and so she shouldn't expect much money back anyway, even if she could make him sell because he was entitled to 50-50. Guess what my friend's response was? She waited for her next mid-week day off work, waited for the time when she knew her scummy ex and his new girlfriend would leave for work, and got her family and a van to move a bed, wardrobe, etc. into the second bedroom of the house, which had been just her daughter's room at the time. She said when him and his girlfriend walked in that evening to find her and their daughter sitting on the sofa watching TV, they looked like their brains exploded. How she managed to live in that house for a month with her ex and his mistress/girlfriend and not blow up is beyond me. She even said she actually enjoyed keeping her calm and acting as if they weren't there, while they just got more and more uncomfortable and awkward living there until they eventually did give in and leave. And damn, ripe stars, I gotta say, that's probably one of the most awkward situations I've ever heard about. I would have not wanted to be a part of that in any way, shape or form. Also, screw all people who cheat on their partners. Either way, the next one is a McDonald's revenge story. So when I was a manager at McDonald's, I had a guy do this. We had a freak rush on chicken nuggets, like 520 pieces in a row. The customer pulls to the window, the cashier let him know it was gonna be another 3 minutes for his nuggets, and did he want to wait or get something else? He demands to speak with the manager. He says that he's been waiting 5 minutes already and he's not gonna pay or move until his food is ready. I said that I needed him to pay and pull forward in order to clear the drive-thru. He refused and said they will have to wait. I went to the back window, put a drawer in, and we started cashing and giving the food out there. 20 minutes later, fuming customer at the front window begins pounding on the window. I open it and he screams at me to know where his food was. I told him he was not getting any food, he was blocking my drive-thru and impeding my business, and he needed to leave or I would be calling the police. It looked like he would explode with anger, but he just screeched out of there. It was the most satisfying interaction with an entitled customer I had while working at McDonald's. And yeah guys, I guess some people simply go crazy while waiting for their chicken nuggets. Anyway, the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. It starts like this. So, my adult son Bob is a lazy, arrogant, entitled, abusive know-it-all. By the way, guys, if I ever have kids in the future, I hope I will never have to use any of these adjectives for my kid. Anyway, I tried to parent him, but my wife always threatened to divorce me and take all the kids anytime I abused him, aka lecturing, grounding, taking away privileges. I know I'm not innocent in this, but Bob has turned out insufferable. 8 years ago, Bob, then 26, married Beth, 19 years old. They had twins right away, so I gave him a glorified job that he is still doing. I gave Beth an entry-level position with a couple years later, and she quickly worked her way up. She is indispensable now. 3 years ago, I asked her to go to school to learn the technical side of the business. She is doing amazing and will even finish early. Bob did not want Beth to go to school, but I pressured and bribed to get him to accept. I offered an extra allowance and told him that she could help him run the company after I passed. I might be the a-hole because I lied. I have zero intention of giving him the company. Bluntly, he's just incompetent and I've been grooming Beth in the background to succeed me. I am secretly planning to retire in the next 5 to 6 years after Beth is established. Bob himself gave up his dream job to stay and work here, which I know is bad, but he was expecting me to fund his career, so am I still the bad guy here? Added to answer a couple of questions. Bob wanted to be a music producer. I have not directly told Beth that I will support her if she leaves, but you all have convinced me that I should. And yes, I've talked to a lawyer, a whole lot of them. Legally, he's entitled to nothing. If he fights it, my lawyers are better than his mother's lawyers. And here, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about all of this. Do you think that OP is actually the a-hole here, or is he doing a good thing? Let me know what you think in the comments. And some people on Reddit said, not the a-hole, Bob is a controlling leech. It's almost fitting that he gave up his dream job, which has been where for the last 8 years? After trying to hold her own career back. Make sure Beth herself knows everything well in advance and is gonna have time to plan and figure out how to handle this. Comment number 2, not the a-hole at all. However, I hope you make sure to check in on the well-being of Beth and your grandchildren as this unfolds. My dad's father set up my mother and me as trustees for his estate over my father, for pretty good reasons honestly, and then told no one but mom and me. Dad only found out when the will was read and I got to spend part of my last year in college grieving my grandpa, while Dad called me up regularly to rant about how he hoped grandpa was burning in hell for setting up the trust. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I am really losing hope that one day the Karens of the world will all wake up and realize that they are the only main characters in their own story. Since that does not seem to be happening ever, I get to share with you my interaction with a Karen who basically wanted my house. My wife and I recently moved into a new home after living in an apartment and saving for years. She was actually pregnant at the time of the story, so we were stressed out getting the baby room ready and making sure everything was working out. We live in an area that has a couple of colleges not too far away. I think a bus like 2 blocks away from me goes right to one of them. So, as you can imagine, a handful of homes around here are either rented out by a bunch of upper-class men not wanting to live on campus, or people renting out a room in their home to make a little extra money. Our home is on the smaller side, and with our family growing, we have zero interest in dealing with a college kid. They find postings online, and so the first few months we were living there, it went fine. Then one day I got a knock on my door from a kid that honestly did not even look old enough to be going to college. Me, can I help you? Kid, yeah, I go to college and I wanna live here. Me, I'm sorry, I think you may have the wrong house. We never posted anything about renting out. Kid, yeah, but this is a small house, so it's probably cheap enough for me, no problem. I don't know what this kid was thinking, because as any adult right now knows, even the smallest house in a semi-decent neighborhood is expensive. So I repeated myself to the kid that we were not renting and closed the door. My wife and I had a good laugh about it and thought maybe he was getting hazed by being forced to do that or playing some kind of practical joke and had a hidden camera. We are easygoing people and he was just a kid after all, so as long as he left, I really did not care. Then a day later, another knock came around dinner time, so I ignored it to eat. The knocking did not stop though, so I told my wife to sit and I would handle it. Standing at the door was the same kid, but now with a woman that looked like a typical Karen. I internally groaned, knowing this was going to be annoying. Me, can I help you, ma'am? Karen, yes, my son came here yesterday and wanted your property, but you just had him go away without even listening. Me, I listened to what he said. If he wants to find a place to rent, he will have to look online for postings. Karen, this is unacceptable. My boy is going to be starting at college in a couple of months and needs a place to live. Me, that really is not my problem. Most freshmen live in dorms anyway. Karen, dorms? I don't expect my son to be exposed to a horrible cramped lifestyle like those poor kids. He deserves to live in a house and this is the one that he likes. Me, we don't have a room for rent. I don't know how else I can explain this to you. Karen, a room? You clearly don't understand what we are trying to explain to you. I would not allow him to live with such a rude stranger. You will give him the entire house. I honestly thought she was joking, but she actually wanted us to give her son our house and for us to go and move out. It went back and forth for a while before I told her that she was crazy and slammed the door in her face. For anybody curious, she was offering like $200 a month to give her son the entire house. She did not get off my property though and instead kept knocking and yelling through the door. My wife was getting very upset at this point and the doctor said that she could not be stressed, so I sent her to our bedroom and told her to close the door and put on headphones. I would take care of Karen. Before I could even go and yell at her again for round 2, I saw police sirens outside of my house and officers started banging on my door. Karen looked so smug and it turns out she called the police on me for being in my own house. She started crying and saying how her son owned the house and was gone for just a few months. Then the nasty squatters, aka my wife and I, came and refused to leave. The police started to arrest me and go looking for my wife, but I managed to talk over Karen to tell them that I owned the house and had the paperwork to prove it. Karen started yelling that it was a fake, and I told them they could see the paperwork and confirm it with the town that we had bought the house 5 months ago. They agreed to hold off on the arrest until they saw the papers and made some calls. Karen was angry and telling them that they had to arrest us because her son had to move back into his house. Then the police asked the son where his papers were and he could only look up at his mother. He did not even know what a deed was, let alone had one for this house. The police told us that it all seemed in order, that I did own my house and property. Meanwhile, the police turned their attention onto Karen, who was angry and now saying that her son deserved the house because he had to get to school and we could always just move somewhere else because we did not need the house anyway. It turns out us being squatters was not the only thing she said on the phone to the police. She talked about being physically assaulted by me and that I punched her in the face. Even though there was clearly no evidence, the police seemed very annoyed at this lady and told her that it was against the law to call the police for a fake emergency and lied to them about somebody doing an illegal activity. When you call about an assault and squatters, even an ambulance shows up as well as a ton of police that could have been doing better things. The last I saw of Karen, she was being put into handcuffs and shoved into the back of the police car, all the while yelling at her son to get the names and badges of the officers because she was going to sue all of them. Then they drove away and we got some peace and quiet. My wife took a while to calm down after all the excitement, and a couple months later we welcomed our baby boy into the world without any problems. Nobody's son is going to be living in my house except for my own. And yeah guys, I don't even know where to begin with in this story. Making false police reports is just the worst thing ever, especially because you are wasting resources which could be used for actual emergencies. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.